Have you ever witnessed an act of human courage so pure it changed a wild animal's soul forever? When wildlife photographer Sarah Chen risked everything to save a dying elephant cub from a massive python's crushing coils, she thought her heroism would end there. But what the mother elephant did next, her response to this stranger's sacrifice, created a bond so profound, so heartbreaking, that it will haunt your heart long after this story ends. The Mabira Research Station sprawls across the remote wetlands of northern Uganda, where the mighty Nile creates a vast delta system of channels, islands, and seasonal floodplains that harbor some of Africa's most endangered wildlife. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. This pristine wilderness serves as both scientific sanctuary and last refuge for creatures whose survival depends on the delicate balance between conservation efforts and nature's relentless cycles of life and death. Towering papyrus reeds create natural corridors between crystal-clear channels, while massive fig trees rise from permanent islands to form cathedral-like canopies where countless species find shelter from both predators and the scorching equatorial sun. The research station's elevated platforms and walkways allow scientists to observe without disturbing the intricate ecosystem that has evolved over millennia in these life-giving waters. This isn't your typical conservation story about human intervention and animal rescue. What you're about to witness transcends every boundary between species, every assumption about wild animal behavior, and every expectation about the capacity for gratitude and memory in the natural world. It's not about scientific observation or wildlife protection. It's about something far more profound that occurs when courage creates bonds that defy every law of evolution and survival. The delta's unique geography creates situations where elephants, normally terrestrial giants, must navigate waterways and muddy channels to reach the mineral-rich islands essential for their survival. During the rainy season, when water levels rise dramatically, these gentle giants become surprisingly adept swimmers, using their trunks as snorkels while crossing channels that separate them from vital resources. But the same waters that provide life also harbor ancient predators, perfectly adapted to aquatic hunting. In this fluid landscape where survival requires constant adaptation, an encounter was about to unfold that would forever change how we understand the emotional depth of Earth's most intelligent land mammals. On this particular morning, as mist rose from the warm channels and the first rays of sunlight pierced the papyrus cathedral, destiny was preparing to test the bonds between human compassion and elephant memory in ways that would haunt everyone who witnessed what followed. Dr. Sarah Chen had dedicated the last 8 years of her life to documenting the complex social behaviors of Mabira's elephant population, her camera lens capturing moments of tenderness, intelligence, and family bonds that challenged every assumption about animal consciousness. The 34-year-old wildlife photographer possessed an unusual combination of scientific rigor and artistic sensitivity that had earned her international recognition for images that revealed the emotional depths of her subjects. Sarah's weathered hands bore the calluses of countless hours spent maneuvering heavy telephoto equipment through challenging terrain, while her patient brown eyes reflected the kind of deep respect for wildlife that came from years of intimate observation. Her ability to remain motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot, had been developed through meditation practices that allowed her to become nearly invisible to the creatures she studied. What made Sarah extraordinary wasn't just her technical skill, but her intuitive understanding of elephant communication. She had learned to read the subtle trunk movements, ear positions, and vocalizations that formed the complex language of these gentle giants, earning their trust through years of non-intrusive presence in their daily lives. In the heart of the Delta lived Amara's herd, a matriarchal family unit led by a magnificent 50-year-old female whose wisdom had guided her family through decades of seasonal migrations, drought cycles, and the increasing pressures of human encroachment. Amara's massive frame, scarred by years of protecting her family, moved with surprising grace through the challenging terrain of channels and mudflats. Her most precious charge was little Quito, a 6-month-old calf whose playful curiosity and boundless energy brought joy to the entire herd, despite the constant vigilance required to keep him safe in an environment filled with hidden dangers. Quito's trunk, still learning its incredible versatility, constantly explored textures, scents, and sounds that his young mind struggled to categorize. The calf's golden brown hide bore the distinctive markings of his bloodline, while his bright eyes sparkled with the fearless wonder that made him both beloved and vulnerable in equal measure. Neither Sarah nor the elephant family could have predicted that their peaceful morning routine was about to be shattered by an encounter that would test every bond of courage, gratitude, and memory. The first sign of trouble came as a subtle shift in the delta's natural rhythm that Sarah's trained senses detected through her camera's viewfinder. She had been photographing Amara's herd as they navigated a narrow channel between two papyrus islands when the familiar symphony of wetland sounds began to change. The constant chatter of waterbirds fell silent in a wave that spread outward from deeper waters, while the gentle lapping of current against reed stems was replaced by an ominous stillness. Sarah lowered her camera, her photographer's instincts immediately recognizing the environmental cues that preceded danger in the wild. The surface of the channel, which moments before had shown only the gentle ripples of elephant movement, now displayed subtle wake patterns that spoke of something large moving beneath the surface with predatory intent. Amara's ancient wisdom had detected the disturbance even before Sarah's human senses registered the threat. The matriarch's massive ears fanned forward as she tested the air with her sensitive trunk, analyzing chemical messages that carried information about threats her family had never encountered in these waters. Her low, rumbling calls to the herd carried warning notes that made every adult elephant immediately alert. Little Quito, fascinated by the colorful water lilies that bloomed in the channel's shallower areas, had wandered slightly ahead of the herd's protective formation. The young calf's trunk explored the floating flowers with innocent delight, his playful splashing creating ripples that attracted attention from creatures perfectly adapted to aquatic hunting. From her elevated position on the research platform, Sarah could see what the elephants could not: dark shapes moving with calculated precision through the deeper sections of the channel. Her telephoto lens revealed the unmistakable patterns of a massive African rock python, easily 25 feet in length, using the murky water as perfect camouflage while it maneuvered into position for an ambush. The convergence was inevitable and terrifying. Quito's innocent exploration was carrying him directly into the path of one of Africa's most formidable constrictors, while the herd's formation in the narrow channel limited their ability to respond quickly to threats approaching from beneath the surface. What erupted from the channel's murky depths was a nightmare of scales and muscle that dwarfed every predatory encounter Sarah had witnessed in 8 years of African fieldwork. The massive African rock python exploded from beneath the surface like a living torpedo, its enormous head larger than a grown man's torso and jaws gaping wide enough to engulf little Quito's entire body. 25 feet of pure predatory power moved with fluid precision honed by millions of years of evolutionary perfection. The attack was swift and calculated with terrifying efficiency. Before little Quito could react to the disturbance in the water around him, powerful coils wrapped around his small form with the inexorable force of a living vice. The young elephant's trumpet of terror pierced the morning air as he found himself trapped in an embrace designed to crush the life from prey many times his size. The python's strategy was diabolical in its effectiveness. Instead of attempting to drag Quito into deeper water where the adult elephants might lose sight of him, the serpent positioned itself in the channel's middle depth, too deep for the elephants to stand comfortably, but shallow enough that the struggle would be visible to create maximum psychological impact on the watching family. Each of Quito's desperate movements only seemed to trigger the python's constricting response, the massive coils tightening with methodical precision that spoke to countless successful hunts. The young elephant's trunk, his most versatile tool for communication and exploration, was pinned helplessly against his body as the serpent's embrace eliminated his ability to call for help or defend himself. From her observation platform, Sarah watched in horror as the gentle creature she had photographed playing with flowers just moments before was systematically crushed by one of nature's most efficient killers. The python's cold intelligence was evident in every movement. This was not random predation, but a calculated assault by an apex predator that had studied the elephant family's patterns and chosen the perfect moment to strike. Amara's roars of maternal anguish echoed across the entire delta as she witnessed her youngest family member disappearing beneath the surface of the channel, his small form barely visible within the python's deadly embrace. The elephant herd's response to little Quito's peril revealed the heartbreaking limitations that even these intelligent giants faced when confronted with aquatic predators. Amara's desperate attempts to reach her calf were thwarted by the channel's depth and muddy bottom, her massive weight causing her to sink dangerously into the soft sediment with each step toward the python's location. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her anguished, trumpeting calls seemed to shake the very foundations of the delta as she struggled against the physical constraints that kept her from her baby. The other adult elephants formed a frantic semicircle around the attack site, their collective intelligence recognizing the tactical impossibility of their situation. Their enormous size, normally their greatest asset in protecting the herd, became a liability in the deep water where the python held every advantage. Each attempt to approach only drove them deeper into the treacherous mud, while their panicked movements created waves that further destabilized little Quito's precarious position. Sarah found herself frozen in a moment of impossible decision that would haunt her forever. Every instinct screamed at her to remain safely on the observation platform. Approaching a python during feeding was tantamount to suicide, and her death would serve no purpose in saving the calf. Yet as she watched Quito's struggles growing weaker, something deeper than self-preservation began to override her rational mind. Her camera equipment, worth more than most people's annual salaries, suddenly seemed meaningless compared to the life ebbing away in the channel below. Sarah's hands trembled as she calculated distances, water depth, and the terrifying reality that she might be the only witness capable of attempting a rescue. Her years of studying elephant behavior had taught her to read their emotional states, and what she saw in Amara's eyes was pure maternal devastation. The photographer's decision crystallized as she watched little Quito's trunk disappear completely beneath the python's coils. In that moment, Sarah Chen ceased being an objective scientific observer and became something far more dangerous, a human being willing to risk everything to prevent a tragedy that would forever scar this elephant family's collective memory. Sarah's descent from the observation platform was a controlled fall that violated every safety protocol she had ever learned during her years of field research. The photographer abandoned thousands of dollars worth of equipment without a second thought, her movements driven by an urgency that transcended rational decision-making. Her hands found purchase on the platform's support cables as she rappelled toward the channel, with the desperate speed of someone who understood that seconds could mean the difference between life and death. What made Sarah's approach extraordinary was her apparent understanding of the tactical challenge she faced. Unlike a panicked rescue attempt that might endanger both herself and Quito, she moved with calculated precision born from years of observing predator-prey interactions through her camera lens. Her route took her to a section of the channel bank where she could enter the water at an angle that would minimize the python's ability to include her in its constricting attack. The elephant herd's reaction to seeing this small human figure preparing to enter their crisis was a mixture of confusion and what could only be described as desperate hope. Amara's trumpeting calls shifted from pure anguish to something that sounded remarkably like encouragement, as if her maternal intelligence recognized that this unlikely ally represented Quito's only chance for survival. From various observation points around the delta, other research station personnel began to notice the commotion, but their distance from the scene and the dense papyrus vegetation that blocked clear sight lines meant that Sarah's desperate rescue attempt would unfold without backup or support from her colleagues. The channel's muddy bottom and swift current created additional hazards that could easily claim a human life, while the python's massive size meant that even a successful intervention might simply result in 2 victims instead of 1. Yet Sarah's years of studying elephant family dynamics had taught her something that transcended scientific objectivity. She had witnessed the devastating grief that followed the loss of young family members, and she could not stand by and document another tragedy. As she entered the murky water, Sarah carried with her the desperate hopes of an entire elephant family and the terrible knowledge that her next few minutes would determine whether she became a hero or another casualty in nature's endless cycle of predation. How candid. Sarah's entry into the channel was a calculated plunge that brought her face to face with one of nature's most formidable predators in its own element. The photographer's approach strategy revealed the tactical intelligence she had developed through years of close wildlife observation. Instead of a direct assault that would trigger the python's defensive responses, she moved through the water with deliberate stealth designed to exploit the serpent's focus on its current prey. The massive python, completely absorbed in the methodical process of constricting little Quito, remained unaware of the human approaching from its blind spot. Sarah's years of underwater photography in challenging conditions had taught her to move through water with minimal disturbance, skills that now served her in the most unlikely rescue scenario of her career. Her initial contact with the python was surgical in its precision. Sarah's hands found purchase on the snake's massive body at the exact point where its coils created maximum pressure around Quito's chest. Her fingers digging into the muscular flesh with surprising strength developed through years of handling heavy camera equipment. Her understanding of anatomy, honed through countless hours of photographing animal behavior, guided her to the pressure points where human intervention could have maximum impact. The python's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The massive serpent, startled by this unprecedented interference, momentarily loosened its grip on Quito to assess this new threat. But Sarah had anticipated this response, using the brief window of opportunity to position herself where she could maintain contact with the snake while avoiding its most dangerous capabilities. What followed was the most extraordinary display of human determination ever documented in wildlife research. Sarah's battle with the python wasn't the wild thrashing of a panicked victim, but a calculated struggle that demonstrated remarkable understanding of leverage, anatomy, and the physics of constriction. Her photographer's eye for detail had become a life-saving advantage, as she targeted specific points along the serpent's body where her intervention could disrupt its killing mechanism. The channel erupted in chaos, as 25 feet of enraged python thrashed against this unexpected challenger, while little Quito fought desperately to draw breath in the brief moments when the coils loosened enough to allow his lungs to expand. Arcadar. The battle in the muddy channel reached its crescendo when Sarah executed a maneuver that demonstrated the full extent of her desperate courage and scientific understanding. Using her knowledge of reptilian anatomy gained through years of photographing predator behavior, she managed to locate the python's most vulnerable pressure point, the section just behind the skull where the spine was most accessible to disruption. Sarah's fingers found purchase in exactly the right location, applying pressure that sent shockwaves through the serpent's nervous system and momentarily disrupted its ability to maintain the crushing grip around little Quito. The photographer's understanding of animal psychology told her that pythons, like most predators, would reassess the cost-benefit ratio of their hunt when faced with unexpected resistance. The critical moment came when Sarah managed to create enough space between the python's coils and Quito's body for the young elephant to draw his first full breath in several terrifying minutes. The calf's weak trumpet of relief seemed to galvanize Sarah's remaining strength, giving her the determination needed for the final phase of her impossible rescue. But it was the python's own survival instincts that ultimately secured victory. The massive serpent, recognizing that this hunt had become more costly than any meal was worth, began the process of disengagement that would save both human and elephant lives. With fluid grace that belied the violence of the previous moments, the snake released its remaining coils and began retreating toward the deeper channels where it could disappear without further confrontation. Sarah's exhausted arms gathered little Quito against her chest as she struggled to keep both their heads above water in the treacherous current. The young elephant's body was limp with exhaustion, but his small chest rose and fell with the precious rhythm of life restored. His tiny trunk weakly touched Sarah's face in what seemed like a gesture of gratitude that transcended every boundary between species. From the channel banks, Amara's roars of relief echoed across the entire delta as she witnessed her youngest family member being rescued by this brave human who had risked everything for a creature that was not her own. Ankorka. What unfolded next would be remembered as one of the most terrifying displays of calculated predator revenge ever documented. Cesar moved through the compound's corridors with the fluid precision of Africa's apex predator, but his behavior transcended natural hunting patterns. This was systematic retribution guided by 18 months of accumulated rage and traumatic memory. The first security guards who encountered the liberated lion discovered that their weapons training had never prepared them for facing a 400-pound predator whose psychological conditioning had taught him to associate human presence with pain and violence. Cesar's attacks were swift, precise, and devastating, demonstrating combat techniques that no wild lion would naturally possess. As alarms shrieked throughout the compound, the wealthy spectators gathered in the arena found themselves trapped in their own entertainment venue as Cesar systematically disabled escape routes. The magnificent predators seemed to understand exactly how the facility operated and moved with strategic intelligence that suggested he had been mentally mapping every detail of his prison during months of captivity. Dr. Santos, following Caesar's path of destruction while attempting to reach the compound's exit, witnessed behavior that challenged every assumption about animal psychology and memory. The lion wasn't killing randomly. He was selecting specific targets with precision that indicated he remembered individual faces and roles within the organization that had tortured him. The arena itself became the final battleground where spectators who had gathered to watch Caesar's execution instead found themselves facing the terrifying reality of predator justice. The reinforced barriers designed to contain animal victims now trapped human perpetrators, as Caesar demonstrated exactly why apex predators had ruled ecosystems for millions of years. Law enforcement helicopters approaching in the distance provided the soundtrack for carnage that defied description. The compound's communication systems had been systematically destroyed, making coordination impossible, as Caesar moved through the facility with the methodical efficiency of a creature whose intelligence had been underestimated by those who viewed him as mere entertainment. When the dust finally settled, the underground fighting ring that had operated with impunity for years lay in ruins, its criminal operators either dead or fled into the desert, leaving behind evidence that would lead to arrests across multiple countries. The terrifying efficiency of Caesar's revenge had achieved what law enforcement agencies had failed to accomplish through conventional methods. The story of Sarah's heroic rescue became legendary in conservation circles, but it was what happened afterward that truly haunted those who witnessed it. For years following that day, whenever Sarah returned to the Delta, Amara's herd would approach her with a reverence reserved for family. The matriarch would always touch Sarah's face with her trunk in the same gentle gesture, as if reaffirming a sacred bond forged in life-threatening waters. Little Quito grew into a strong young elephant who never forgot his human savior. Rangers reported countless instances of the herd protecting Sarah during her research, positioning themselves between her and potential dangers with the devotion typically reserved for their own young. Most haunting of all was Amara's behavior during the final years of her life. The ancient matriarch would spend hours by the channel where the rescue occurred, her rumbling calls seeming to tell and retell the story to younger generations. Wildlife experts believe she was ensuring that the memory of human courage would be passed down through elephant oral tradition. Sarah's footage from that day changed wildlife research forever, proving that the emotional bonds between humans and elephants could transcend every boundary of species and time. But for Sarah, the true haunting wasn't the fame or scientific recognition. It was the knowledge that somewhere in the Delta, an elephant family carried her memory in their hearts with the same intensity that she carried theirs. Their story reminds us that some acts of courage create ripples that extend far beyond the moment, touching lives and memories in ways that echo through generations, proving that love and gratitude are truly universal languages. On cheese. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.